Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, May 10th. We are joined by our all-star panel of top local journalists, Callie Fausey, staff writer for the Santa Barbara Independent, Nick Welsh, executive editor and angry poodle for the Indy, and Josh Molina, man of many hats and Newshawk correspondent, as well as host of the ever-expanding podcast, Santa Barbara Talks. Thank you all for being with us. First of all, Callie, we got to start with you. You have the cover story in the Indy this week about ketamine, the widely known anesthetic and dissociative psychedelic. It's a sort of tour de force of reporting, I have to say. We learn a lot about ketamine and particularly its treatment for its use in treating treatment-resistant depression, but you also experienced it yourself. What was the whole thing like? How do you feel about it now? What's your takeaway?
Um, I've been asked a few times if I would do it again, and I definitely would if it was anywhere within like what I could afford. But yeah, I talk about it in the article that the main access to it is how expensive it is. It's like $700, $2,000 a treatment. But it was really beneficial actually for my mental health. I talk about it in the story. I struggle with dissociative episodes. And in the weeks following the ketamine treatment, I was feeling way less dissociative. And as I put it, like in the article, it kind of just planted my feet back on the ground, kind of got me out of my head. It was a really, really good experience. And the experience itself was crazy. It's like, it felt like my consciousness was ripped out of my body. It was wild.
Yeah, and you worked with Dr. Remy,
Remy Drozd. Yeah.
yeah, who has a clinic over on Milpas.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I thought particularly having, full disclosure, been a client of his as well. Your descriptions of the experience were really right on, and in that, it sort of takes you out of your ego into, sort of seeing your place in the universe a little bit better, and or as you put it, pretty effing deep. Which might have been the takeaway line for me. So yeah, and then there was another practitioner that you spoke with who I wasn't familiar with. Talk about her a little bit.
Yeah, Samantha Lau, she also has a practice in Santa Barbara. Um, she's been sorry, my cat is like meowing and scratching the furniture.
You shouldn't have given her the oral ketamine.
um yeah, but she kind of gave me more of the like insight, the logistics of the treatment. And I'm so sorry. Yeah, she
Oh,
can't she
bring the cat in. It's fine.
okay.
Here, maybe he'll bark.
Yeah, she gave me a little bit more of the logistical side of everything, kind of told me about how ketamine is a best treatment for people who are kind of at the end of their rope in terms of seeking treatment for their depression. I spoke to one of her patients, and her patient had like an extremely like life-changing experience with ketamine where she had exhausted all of her other options, and this was something that actually helped her get out of her head and get out of the darkness, as I say.
Yeah.
Yeah, does Cottage Hospital or Sansom or any of those places, you would think if this is turning into the big things, that they would be interested in tapping into that market and providing that service. So is there any sign that they're looking at that? Or UCLA, will they open a ketamine clinic here to compete with Cottage?
UCLA, they're opening everything else.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not too sure, but it really is a growing industry. So I wouldn't be surprised if UCLA, especially for research, I could see UCLA jumping on it for research. It's being researched for treating, you know, PTSD in veterans and so that kind of thing. I could definitely see that
Yeah,
happening.
and as you point out in the piece, I mean, there is a substantial body of research showing its effectiveness in treating depression, among other things. You know, and you know, back in the '60s, the early '60s, you know, psychedelics were really being used for that before Timothy Leary sort of, you know, squelched the whole thing by acting like a knucklehead for the next 50 years. So there's legislation in Sacramento to legalize other psychedelics for treatments and stuff. Anyway, it's a great piece, Callie, and congratulations on it. And maybe we'll do a separate show on it. We'll bring Remy in here and talk about it a little bit more. But
That'd be
mega
awesome.
kudos for that one. And I urge everyone to pick up the Indie this week and read Callie's story, which is just really excellent on a number of different levels. So, all right, back to the mundane world. Josh, the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board decided that National Teachers Appreciation Day was the precise moment to appropriate moment to announce layoffs and that are going to save $2 million. That's going to really help negotiations with the teachers union, I imagine.
I think I'm going to take some ketamine before the next school board meeting so I can deal with the cabinet and Hilda Maldonado looking these teachers in the eye and actually telling them that, well, they're not really saying anything, but non-verbally and emotional wise, they are just not responsive at all to these teachers who are begging and pleading and opening their heart and soul and saying, don't do this to us. You know, you're mistreating us. We want a better contract. And how can you lay off classified workers and teachers on the same day as National Appreciation Week? It's really like bizarro world in that school board meeting. It is unlike anything I've experienced before. I mean, I covered a school board 20 years ago. I covered it when Monique Limon was a school board member, even before then. And there have been debates about bilingual education. There have been contentious issues that last a few weeks, but nothing this long and this sustained
It's
over
been all
several
year. It's
months.
been since the
Yeah.
beginning of the school year.
And it's just ridiculous because it's almost as though this cabinet and the superintendent have been just transplanted into this world of running a school district, and they seem to be totally disconnected from the emotion they're hearing from these teachers, and it's very bad. It's, you know, we cover these things and things bubble up and it's a big vote and then everyone's like fine later. There are going to be long-term, long-lasting ramifications here in terms of the trust of the school district. And I don't think Hilda Maldonado knows. And if she knows, she doesn't care. The damage that is being done to the reputation of Santa Barbara Unified is going to take years. It's not like the news press, but it is close. It is analogous that there's this systematic like takedown of this institution and they're tone deaf, you know, and even the board members, these are nice board members, all five, but they're really being managed by Hilda. They are totally deferring to Hilda. There's a woman I quoted who, Kristen Bolingmo, who said, she's a teacher. She said she's crying, like she's actually, tears are coming from her eyes, you know, and they're just, all right, your 90 seconds are up, you know, and it's just like,
Yeah.
there's such a disconnect. So they did all these layoffs. I think they did, I don't 15 or something. Kelly probably remembers the specific numbers. They sent out a whole bunch of rescind letters. They pulled back. They ended up laying off something like 4 teachers, and 8 others have their hours reduced or they go to a different position, and then they laid off classified employees. So it's a big mess. And I think, you know, it's not my place as a journalist to say, here's how much money you should give the teachers and all of that. But I mean, I will say from a just a member of this community who has had kids in the district and will have another kid in the district. It's sad. It's just embarrassing how they treat these teachers, and they seem to not really care. It's just all bottom line money to them.
You know, Josh, I was curious. I was reading the LA Times this week, and as the LA unifies, they're going through very similar problems in terms of, major budget shortfalls, major layoff issues, and it's another of it is just economic pinch, but then it's compounded by sort of the lack of the personal touch. And to what extent is this happening everywhere throughout the state? And really, to what extent is this just bad communication style, because bad bedside manner when you have bad news to deliver, or to what extent is there some other path that they should be taking other than I feel your pain?
Yeah, which is what Gabe Escobedo, I felt bad for Gabe. You quoted him extensively, Josh, and I mean, his heart's in it. I mean, he really wants to. It was an entry-level elected position for him, and now he's just trying to keep his head above water.
Yeah, and just to answer Nick's question, of course, this is going on in other school districts. It has not happened in Goleta. It has not happened locally, but we do see it in LA Unified and other areas. But really, what I've been writing and reporting about for more than 2 years now is really not about the insider details of the budget and trying to say what they should or shouldn't do. It's really about the tone, the culture, and the attitude that has happened ever since Hilda Maldonado took over. This mass exodus, she appointed all these new cabinet members, a COO that's $221,000 a year. And these are people who don't really know and have a connection to the school sites. And that's what the principals say.
Well,
that's what the teachers say.
John Becchio does.
Well, John Becchio does, and he's doing a great job of navigating both sides, and he'll probably be the last one standing eventually on the cabinet. But it's really this horrible sort of disrespect that these outsiders in the cabinet are showing to this community. They're not understanding or acknowledging that you can't just cookie cutter your way through budget problems in Santa Barbara. And I think that's the real essence of the problem from at least my perspective at these board meetings. And as I've said a million times, you've got a couple hundred people at the meeting. They removed a lot of the chairs. They were in the spillover room. They're outside. There's a bunch of cabinet members in the room. It's just, it feels a very top down. And Ed Kelly's great guy, super dad, but their public relations through all of this is very, very poor.
Hey, Callie, remind us where we are in the process. This isn't directly, these layoffs aren't directly connected to the negotiations with the Teachers Association, but it may as well be, as Josh says, from our perception perspective. But they're in mediation, correct, or not? What's going on with that?
No, so they're in a state mandated impasse process because they
right.
couldn't reach an agreement during, like regular negotiations. But the first part of that was entering mediation with a state appointed mediator. And that after 2 sessions didn't, result in anything. They didn't reach an agreement. So they leave the mediation process. They're released from mediation by the state mediator. And now they're in the process of fact finding. So each side will, present facts of what they, how they see the district's finances, and then a panel of 3 people, like 1 person from the Santa Barbara, the school district, 1 person chosen by the SBTA, and then a neutral party will create a report. And
Are those public sessions, or are they closed door sessions?
I'm pretty sure the actual fact-finding sessions are closed door sessions, but the resulting fact-finding report will be public.
All right, and obviously this isn't going to be resolved before the end of the school year, but it's going to spill over into the start of the next school year. scale of 1 to 5, what do you think the chances of having a teacher's strike are next school year?
4.5, maybe.
Josh?
I've spoken
You know, they're
to,
doing fundraisers. They're doing fundraisers
Yeah.
to raise money for a strike. I think that Hoseby Galindo has gone so far here that, I mean, they can't settle for anything less than the 23% they've been asking for. And I think that they're ready to do it. They're preparing to strike. Now, of course, you've covered this, Jerry. You've covered this, Nick. Like, you know, a lot of it is union bluster, right? And then, you know, it comes down to it, they might accept. But I get a sense that they're ready to strike. They're willing to strike. And I would not be surprised if we had this going on to start the school year.
Oh, great. All right, well, let's talk a little good news. Nick, you had a piece about the supervisors and the tiny homes project, the Los Posadas one in particular, which seems to have actually be some practical impact on our homelessness issues. And you know, maybe it's a small advance, but it seems like progress.
Yeah, it's homelessness is one of those issues where we all see the failures, but we don't see the successes. And the successes have been happening. In the last 3 years, 2 years, there's been sort of a wave of tiny home villages, though they don't call it tiny homes, call it cabins, but there are these.
What do they call it?
home,
Cabins.
Yeah, there are 3 locations now with 208 units of what they call, interim supportive housing, and these are a lot of homeless people don't want to go to homeless shelter. Big surprise. They don't want to sleep in a room with 100 other people or 50 other people snoring and whatever. It's, and they want to have a place where they can go in and shut the door and store their stuff. So the tiny homes were started by this group called Dignity Moves, which is San Francisco Bay Area nonprofit created by young entrepreneurs who said, hey, we're smart young entrepreneurs and we can move the needle here. So they came into a partnership with the county of Santa Barbara, which has all this real estate with nothing on it, and said, hey, why don't we put, so downtown on Santa Barbara Street in the parking lot, they put 33 tiny homes. And La Posada, which is over by Modoc and Hollister, with the old juvenile hall, it's what, 80. And out in Santa Maria, they have another one, which I believe is 90. They have 2 more in the works that they hope to have by the end of the year. And there's been a significant number of people who have actually transitioned out of them into permanent housing. And there had been some blowback by homeless civil rights advocates saying the rules are too strict, there's too much supervision, we can't bring our friends and hang out. And it's a sort of a delicate tightrope. But we saw what happened up at the Rose Garden Inn on State Street about a year and a half ago when they converted a motel there. And friends could come and visit, and it became kind of an out-of-control party, and did not work well with the neighbors. And when you're locating these things, you really have to get along with the neighbors exceptionally well.
Yeah.
And so far, they've really done an amazing job, at least downtown, where we have the most sense of familiarity, where it's been remarkably drama-free.
Yeah. And the other thing is, we've had this discussion, not to oversimplify, but, is homelessness a housing problem or is it a mental health and addiction problem? And obviously it's both. And one of the things that struck me about your reporting on this project is the accessibility of services to people that are there.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point, so it's the county of Santa Barbara with the land, it's Dignity Moves, these philanthropic entrepreneurs, and then you have Good Samaritan, which had 100 employees before COVID and now has 400. I mean, that's how much it's grown in recent years, and they are pretty much the only game in the county. They were kind of too big to fail. They're the largest single housing provider for homeless people. They're also the largest single rehab and detox provider in the county, period. And what they do is they run a pretty tight ship, and they have a lot of services. So it's, you come on in, we're going to give you a place, and we're going to offer you every kind of service you could possibly need.
Yeah, all right. Hey, Callie, you had a piece about the Boys and Girls Club, and so is there no more Boys and Girls Club, or is there still a club, but it's going to be called something else? Is the site different? What's that all about?
Yeah, so I've updated that story quite a few times since it was originally published, but it is no longer going to be called a Boys and Girls Club. They're losing their charter because the United Club of Santa Barbara County is leaving. They're leaving and taking their name with them. But they still, I talked to, the board still wants to have youth programming at that site on Cannon Perdido Street. They just probably won't be able to call themselves a Boys and Girls Club. I think that they were saying they were trying to figure out maybe be able to keep the charter so that they could keep the name, but yeah, they're looking at other, organizations in town who
Well,
might be.
I mean, that's a huge deal if if the services get a lot. I mean, I know in my grandkids' school, there's, after school, there's just dozens and dozens, scores of kids that go there. So hopefully they'll be able to. And it seems like the nut of the disagreement was over services for teens.
Yeah, it seems like it, like the board of the facility, wanted United to keep up the existing programming, including providing services to teens, and I guess United kind of dropped the ball on that. And so the facilities board stopped paying them to. It was kind of a mixture of things. It seemed like it just disagreements over how they wanted it to operate. And it sucks because, the East Side is losing these kinds of services for kids after school. So kind of a hard blow. So hopefully they'll be able to provide some other programming.
All right.
No,
I read that.
Go ahead, Josh.
Callie, I read that press release, and I read the stories in the media, and I'm really confused. I don't understand like what the core of the conflict is, and I think part of it is Baker. That press release to me was very confusing.
The
And
executive
I'm not like
director,
pointing
you mean,
fingers.
Josh?
Yeah, like I don't understand. Like, who are the villains? Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? I mean, is somebody not doing their job and money's being pulled out? Like, I don't like. Do you what is the actual issue?
So I have like a few other, phone calls to make today, but apparently, Michael Baker, the CEO of United, the United Club, has, they've adopted or absorbed a lot of clubs across Santa Barbara County. And he apparently did something similar in Lompoc, where he kind of changed the makeup of the club after taking it over. So from what I've heard, and this is kind of just, word of mouth, I can't say, what Baker's side to this is, but it sounds like to me that when United takes over a club, they kind of put it in, they want it to like fit this cookie cutter mold of what they want the club to look like.
In terms of the hours and who they're serving.
The hours, who they're serving, who they're employing. So I would say maybe it is a little bit of the fault of United for kind of just taking these clubs over and making them into something that they were never supposed to be, I guess.
All right.
And
Well,
the press release, so it was really, I mean, it was like, hey, it was almost like we've decided to leave. They were kicked out. I mean, this was not the other side had gotten an attorney who specializes in evictions, and they were evicting them, and it's been going on for about a year. the fact that we still don't know who is going to fill the breach is a big problem. But there were a lot of people involved in this that remembered themselves being teenagers, playing there, coming of age there, becoming who they are there. And the fact that Michael Baker was not providing that level of service to older teens really frustrated them. Now, the other side of this is that, like over on the west side where I live, there's a West Side Boys and Girls Club. And for a long time, there was a problem there because the school district would not refer students, junior high school students, to that club if they thought there were going to be gang members or gang age members nearby. They thought, we want young kids to be able to go there without being in the proximity of people who might be in gangs. And I know that was a big source of tension between the school district and the club because, hey, there were some gang members or people who were of that age around Bonnet Park. And I think that Michael Baker may have picked up on that modus operandi with a big downtown operation, which was way bigger, as you said, Jerry. I mean, that's a big operation where a lot of people play.
Yeah, all right, we gotta get out of here, but I do want to touch on a couple of other things real quick. Josh, I've only lived here 25 years, but I've been hearing about Metrolink service coming to Santa Barbara since I arrived. And you have a story this week, which I believe sets a new world record for the most acronyms in a single news story. I mean, it's so complicated about the number of agencies that are involved, but it sounds like something's going to happen finally in bringing some rail service, yes?
Well, I certainly made it sound that way, so I hope that something does happen. But yes, it's been a dream of transportation advocates and local governments and just people in the community to bring a efficient rail service, train service, commuter service from Ventura County into Santa Barbara and Goleta. And it's always been part of this sort of conceptual idea of widening 101 and bringing commuter rail. But it has never happened because Amtrak has not always provided that reliable morning service to get people to work on time. And then there's always those questions of the last mile. You get them to the train station in Santa Barbara, Goleta. How do you get them to work? So what's happening now is SBCAG, Santa Barbara County Association of Governments, Ventura County Transportation Commission, and LoSAN, which is like this regional transit
That's
agency.
my favorite, yeah.
LA, San Luis, Santa Barbara, whatever. They are San Diego. I don't know. So anyway, they're all talking about bringing Metrolink from LA through Ventura County to Santa Barbara to Goleta. And Metrolink, of course, is super established as a reliable rail service in LA and Ventura County. So they're like, yes, we can make this happen. So they have some funding for the first year. They're going to try to get funding for future years from the federal government. And they seem to all be on the same page. The key has always been that UPS owns the tracks and Amtrak, of course, provides the train service. So coordination between all these agencies has also been very difficult in terms of schedules and timing. So now they seem poised to be able to do this. There have been lots of staff meetings on this, behind the scenes meetings. There was a SBCAG sub-regional meeting this week, and it's going to go to the board probably whenever they meet late summer. And they're hoping for it to start it in the fall, but maybe the spring. The bottom line, the 15,000 people who allegedly drive into Santa Barbara and Goleta every day to work, some of them will be off the road and they'll be able to take the commuter rail service and get to work in a reliable, functional way.
I'll believe it when I see it. All right. Finally, Nick, we wouldn't even have to deal with these kinds of things if everybody just got on their electric bikes. And I know you couldn't be more excited that the Board of Supervisors has declared this to be Bike to Work Month. I mean, how are you containing yourself? Talk about some of the celebrations that are going on around this. And
You know, Jerry, I have to wear a special helmet because the champagne corks are just flying fast and furious around here. And I could get hurt. I could get seriously injured. No, it's here's the deal, Jerry. Something like 50% or 60% of the people who live and work in the city of Santa Barbara work within a bike's rideable distance from their jobs. Now, a lot of people, it's not, if you have to take your kids to school, blah, 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 it's not going to work out. But we have our numbers of people who are riding to work have dropped precipitously in recent years. And it's not a distance thing. So we'll see. The other thing is a little factoid that got thrown out. It basically costs the average person $12,000 a year to own, operate, and maintain a car. That's
How
not
much does an electric bike cost?
$2,500. But you know, it's a lot cheaper. No gas, and you know what? You can park anywhere.
Yeah, and you also have the opportunity to run down senior.
You can run down old people like us, Jerry.
All right. All right, we'll leave that one there.
Follow the herd.
Okay, Josh Molina, Nick Welsh, Callie Fausey, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time on Newsmakers.